the Sutton Place Frame Shop. And I see a painting that I just love. It's over there. Look at that. Beautiful, fun painting.
I am so honored. I'm Craven.com, and we have one of the most respectable statesmen in the history of American politics, Mr. Ramsey Clark, who worked with John F. Kennedy. I'm presenting him the Pray for Iraq. You, as a witness of peace who has gone back and forth to Iraq, understand the idea of this ancient Mesopotamia, land of Abraham, the sacred land of Abraham. In the Quran, there's a verse when people think they're doing charm, but they're doing harm. And with the UK and US interests and corporate stealing resources, only monsters kill people. So this is something that took me a year to paint. Then I made posters and postcards out of it. We were stopped in Gilboa, Texas. They said, "You pass in Arabic terrorist literature." I said, "No, it's a pray for rap. We pray for Jesus around here." I said, "I pray for Jesus too, you know." It's a visual cue, it was a Christmas gift, you know. I wasn't leaving them in places, you know. So, there you go. Here, I get these out freely and happily, so.
And they published this in the Fellowship for Reconciliation on the back cover with a poem that someone else wrote, an anti-war poem.
Let me just give you a quick gallery tour here and we'll move on.
Portrays the misery of Iraq. I went there every year from 1990 to 2003, and then went back in 5 and 6. The Gulf War started in 91. I went there before the Gulf War, and that in the fall of 90, and then went 2 weeks during the Gulf War was 6 weeks. So went middle 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was a short Halliburton holiday. One of them, that Basra Road massacre, we never forget.
Yeah, we
Now,
saw that.
Now, I just want to show you, this is the sunset on the petroleum industry, which is, and then over here is Macho, Mankind, Ravages, Mother Earth. Hello, Harold Chan. Here you are, the host of this evening for the ACAP, Association of Public Access Producers. And that's the whole idea. Pathology, instead of eco-friendly energy solutions, we have fossil fuel industry pollutions ravaging Mother Earth. Here's a play staged, and we rehearsed it here in Harold and Maggie's for September 11th. This is Attack Iraq, or Catalunya Triomphant. In September 11th, 1714, Barcelona was under siege, and this is the symbol of the Catalan flag that had its own parliament, the Magna Carta. And then in 1973, of course, Pinochet toppled Salvador Allende, socialist elected Democratic president of Chile, September 11th, backed by Nixon and Kissinger and all that. And this is another painting. This is called well, eco-friendly energy solutions versus fossil fuel industry pollutions, or American dream based on a nightmare. Which is another throw into an image an idea.
I got down to Santiago on about the 16th of September.
Oh, really? You were there the 16th of September, 1973?
73, yeah.
Oh, wow, right after the revolution happened.
Oh, the streets were still.
What?
The streets were still very dangerous, yeah.
Yeah.
And refugees, there were about 1,500 people in the Columbia basement garage. And the Swedish embassy had a couple of hundred, it's a small embassy. They had a couple of hundred people who sought sanctuary in there.
Wow.
They're still shooting people on the streets.
Like Argo all over, only worse.
Yeah, it was really very
Rough. That movie Missing saved me. I was so scared, and I'm glad to see it on screen. Hollywood produced a film with Jack Lemmon, Sissy Spacek.
Sure. We premiered it here. The parents came to it. ACLU sponsored it. I was chairman of the board at that time.
Wow. So there you go. My paintings. So thank you for taking a look at them.
Beautiful, yeah. They're powerful.
called Energy Reflection. This is the poster of Authority, Mr. George. This is a great poster. What is the sound of 51,000 nuclear weapons not exploding?
Coming. So let's give a warm welcome to Ramsey Clark. And thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you. Well, you're exposing yourself to high risk. I'm from Texas, and you ask a Texan to talk, and they don't stop. So watch out, get comfortable, sleep if you can, in the face of all the noise. The subject won't be happy, but it'll be where we are and what we need to do. We've let our country come into a state of perpetual war. The amount of money that we spend on arms assures war. What are you going to do with all those guns and bombs, and how are you going to justify more of them if you don't use them? And they get more dangerous all the time. Our capacity for omnicide through the military is now pretty clear. We have the ability to destroy life on Earth through our military. The best example is the Trident II nuclear fleets. I've worked with the Plowshares people. I'm sure you've heard of them. They're beautiful, basically Catholic radical, but not all Catholic, pacifists. But they don't mind more than personal inconvenience. They don't mind nearly freezing to death to crawl under electrified wires and radar screens and everything else to get up as they did to the bomb depot for the Pacific Trident II nuclear fleet. There are 30 submarines in the Trident II nuclear submarine fleet. 8 are at sea on alert at all times in this one fleet of 4 Trident II nuclear fleets in the world. They're huge, monstrous, fat submarines because they've got about 110. They vary slightly, but say roughly 110 missiles and warheads. 110 per ship. And the warheads are of 2 calibers. One's about 12 times the destructive blast force of the Hiroshima bomb. 12 times. It killed 500,000 people. And the larger one, they say, will leave a crater 50 miles in diameter. That's the actual crater. Not terribly deep, but a shallow bowl. Just try to think of where we live geographically here and put that in the place that'll catch the most people, the biggest population. You can take out Manhattan and all the 5 boroughs here, and you can take out Newark, and you can take out a county or 2 out onto Long Island, and you can take up into Connecticut. You can probably kill 25 million people with one bomb. Just suppose you were going to attack Europe. You decide Europe's got to go. Imagine launching 120 of those warheads toward Europe. There's probably not a person in the room that could name 120 cities in Europe. You'd have to think a long time to do it, you know. Just think of one of those ships. With a sane mind, with a rational mind, ever conceive, I mean, if you were Jules Verne or something, you know, writing 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, you got a big imagination, so you But would a sane person dream of such a thing as being something we would want to put into actuality? How are you going to use it? Who's Captain Nemo going to be? And you got 8 submerged in the Pacific at all times. Just think of launching them against China, or big country, huge population. But what's the fallout beyond the actual destruction, the total obliteration? And here you've got 4 of those fleets. And we have permitted our country to build such a massive, worldwide, deployed system for mass destruction. It almost makes Hiroshima look like a tinker toy. And still more militarism. We've been at war, constant war, for the lives of the majority of our people. If you go back to the beginning of Iraq, you can go back a little further and still have continuous war, but heavy war began in Iraq in January of '91. And you read the paper this morning or any morning, and you find people still being killed there, utter chaos there, no security there. Still 6 million people internally displaced from their homes, and 4 million, and we're talking about a fourth to a third of the population, internally displaced, and 2 or 3 million still in Syria. Syria was had a closed border with Iraq all the years from 1991, when the Gulf War began, until the war against Syria began. But when, in spite of the closed frontier, they took in 1.5 million to 2 million Iraqis who had fled because they couldn't survive in their own homeland or didn't think they could. And they gave them free schooling, and they gave them food when they needed it. They gave them free medicine. At one time, I drove to 10 ICRC bases, Red Cross and Red Crescent bases in near the Iraqi-Syria border. And the majority of all the people that were coming in there daily, they'd average 300 to 700 patients coming in a day. A majority, and all of them, were Iraqis, and no charge. And the people would open their homes. People in Aleppo, clear across the country, would open their homes. By that I mean they would move into 2 rooms and leave 1 room for Iraqis to come into. That was human nature at that time, and here we're trying to destroy them both. We've already destroyed the cradle of civilization. What it will do, it's amazing how durable people are, but you just wonder how long people can take that sort of destruction and have any sense of compassion or love or desire to help others when it's all you can do to save yourself and your own. And still we go on and invent new things, drones and things like that. Drones are, by definition, they're indiscriminate and arbitrary murder. We used to think that you're entitled to a fair trial, but now your fair trial is the CIA, because the CIA determines. I mean, what's the president know? He says, well, I'm going to make the decision. But you have to make a decision that has any rationality on the basis of facts. What's he know? I mean, he's a very smart man, but he doesn't know who's driving where and in Sudan or in Yemen or in Syria or wherever it is. He knows what the CIA tells him. And what do they know? They make more mistakes than the average kid that flunks out of junior high school, you know? I mean, literally, if you want to put it to account, the lessons they have to learn are considerably more complicated. You can't read it out of a book. You got to get out there in the bush and scrub it out. But and who else is in the car? Or you see a shadowy figure going into a house. You say, I think that was him. And you hit the house, and there's 7 people in there, and you kill them all, and you don't give a damn. And you keep doing it. And what psychology does it create among the people? Right this moment, there, a drone may hit us. What kind of living is that? And where does it come from? Trying those cases is amazing because you find that they're fired from air bases in the United States. And if they use real pilots, the excuse for using the pilots is that they'll have a better sense of timing. So you watch them, and the pilot's sitting there, and he's got TV screens, but he's sitting near an air base just north of Las Vegas. That was our first trial. Or near the capital of Kansas, which the air base is about 100 miles west of there. Or Syracuse, New York. We've had 3 trials up there. There's an air base right there. And they're sitting there, and they're firing these drones, which are buzzing around thousands and thousands of miles away. And they see the car going down the road, the guy going into the house, and they decide that they got body language and all, and they're looking, and they say, okay, now pow, and they punch the button, and boom. And there's no place on earth that's safe from that. So in a country that you're hassling, the leadership has to depend on acting in a way that he won't be drone bait. Because he knows that the U.S. can take him out like that if it decides to. Or if they're in for bigger meat, they just take out the whole city. And it's our responsibility. We the people. And we have miserably, miserably failed. That's one reason what I call grassroots TV. You're not going to get this information on the networks. The networks are owned, run, and programs are determined by the values of the 1%. I mean, isn't that pretty obvious? If you're going to give the people a chance to see what they ought to see and hear what they ought to hear and learn how they can organize and act. You know, we talk about power to the people in the old days, but in a sense that's an oxymoron, in the sense that the power is obviously in the people. I mean, if the people act, what can anybody do against them? If we, the people, act, what can they do? Because they're outnumbered, you know, there's just a handful of them in comparison. But we have all these distractions, you know, and we have to put food on the table. We're about to have a kid or whatever it is. And we don't organize. And they're good at disorganizing us. And they're good at breaking up organizations. But getting the message is the only way you can hope for the people to overcome. If we shall overcome, we have to have the message that there's a problem, that this is the problem, that we agree with what the problem is, and that we're going to eliminate the problem. And again, it's redundant to say power's in the people. It's a truism. But the people have to act as a people in unity to ensure that our government does things and only things that are good for children, where they can live happy and grow healthy and be kind and true. And that's possible. We used to sing songs in Sunday school when I was a little kid. Sunday school's over and we're going home. Goodbye, goodbye. Be always kind and true. And the people who are kind and true are going to have, except for all them others that aren't, are going to have good lives. And for each one of them, a couple of other people have better lives than they otherwise ever have. What we're doing is also, this is a beautiful planet. I'm old enough to, I went all through the Amazon Valley in 1946 after I got out of the Marine Corps. I was doing courier service. You go into Manaus and you fly in these Catalunya flying boats that were used to patrol the coast for submarines. A gull-wing twin-engine plane, fly about 100 feet off the Amazon and then up the Madeira. You go 1,700 miles up to Puerto Velo, Old Port, 1,700 miles from the mouth. And you see nothing but rainforest, gorgeous, verdant rainforest. And now you go through there and there are big swaths caught here. I was in Vietnam last August because 40 years ago in August I'd gone over because the United States was, we knew we were beaten, but it was 1973, 40 years ago last year. It was last year, so it was 12. That was the year that we had decided to bomb the dikes in the north because they were essential to control water level, to grow the rice, to feed the troops fighting for the country in the south. All the men were down there. In the south, everybody left the country and was in the city because you were safe in the city. But in the north, everybody's out of the city because we'd bomb the daylights out of the city, and they were out in the country hiding under the bush. The reason that Vietnam could defeat us where Iraq was destroyed is that there was no place to hide in Iraq, you know, they're just desert. They put 250,000 men out there north of Kuwait in the desert, and they're just sitting ducks. Our planes, they couldn't even hit them. I mean, and they were wiped out. 2/3 of those people were killed or injured. Pretty dumb to put them down there, but how else you prevent our armored divisions from rolling up to your cities? And that's what they decided to do. But in Vietnam, they were in the bush. But I went back in as a guest of the government of Vietnam and for the January 23rd, 40th anniversary of the Paris Peace Accords, in which the United States, people don't realize that, Mrs. Ben was Madam Ben, I should say, was the main figure for Vietnam in the 40th anniversary. And she led their peace delegation, a beautiful Vietnamese woman who had spent 3 years in prison, tortured in the South, and then escaped to the North. She was from the South, and then gotten through some schooling and gone over to Paris to be the chief negotiator for the Paris Peace Accords, in which we agreed on January 23rd to get our troops out, and we did. You remember them scrambling to get down to a helicopter from the roof of the embassy in what's now called Ho Chi Minh City, then called Saigon. And one thing that does give you hope is that outside of the Agent Orange areas, which I'll get to in a minute, the people are happy. And they've got what they need. They've got plenty of food, and they're all in school, and there's excitement in their schools. And they stand on their chairs, and when the teacher asks a question, everybody's up with their hand, wanting to be the one to answer it. And in the streets, you see there's plenty of food, and there may be 3 or 4 kids with their parents on a single 3-wheel motorcycle. It's a little overcrowded, but they're happy and they hang on, they don't fall off. But there's the plague of Agent Orange, in which we tried to destroy the umbrella that, and it covers a huge portion of Vietnam today, after all these years. 40 years after the ceasefire, and it's waste. And it's a powerful symbol of what we're doing to the environment. You look at the rainforest in Brazil, and it's more than when you lose the rainforest in Brazil, you lose a lot more than just the rainforest in Brazil. You have climate change all over the place, you know, and you start getting hurricanes and stuff that you never had before. And look at what happens here now. I mean, look at the ice caps in Antarctica and the Arctic, and the beautiful polar bears just hanging on to stay alive. You know, you're out on the last iceberg, and you don't fare well on dry land, and you don't fare at all in hot weather, and it's as if nobody cares. And then you see the tornadoes. I come from Texas, and I remember one time sitting up in the Adolphus Tower, we looked out west and we saw 7 tornadoes, but they were little things, you know. I mean, they might knock a barn down or something, but if they hit it, but they're like little whirlwinds. And now these big things come along, they take out a town of 10,000 people. They come right down the main street and just blast everything, and there are more of them, and there are more coming. And we are destroying Mother Earth, and we don't really know if it's reversible. We haven't even thought about, hey, it's what we're doing. Can we save Mother Earth? What about the children of the future? It's not enough that we let millions die of hunger and starvation and sickness every year that could have been saved easily. I mean, if we had been more for the well-being of children on Earth than power over others through militarism, there wouldn't have been hungry children, there wouldn't have been malnutrition, and we could have wiped out epidemics that take the lives of children and elderly and others. But we were more interested in power and control and concentration of wealth to ourselves. I've never understood. One time I was a young kid, lawyer, so I wasn't too young. There was a guy who was a West Point graduate. He was a lawyer, old lawyer, but he'd dropped out, but he'd take little cases, and he'd walk down the courthouse with no briefcase, but his papers in his pocket. He stopped me. We were walking down. I loved the guy, and he said, Ramsey, do you think it's possible for an honest man to be a millionaire? And I thought, probably not. The question hadn't occurred to me before that. But there's one thing, you know, is you didn't care that much for children or for elderly sick. What are you going to do with all that money, you know? You can't take it with you. And yet, $1 million is peanuts. Now, you got people with billions. And a lot of young people have learned that there's 1% that's so lust for wealth that a dying child doesn't affect them at all, much less millions. How many starve to death, children under 5 in Africa every year?